Hello and welcome to part 2 of the series on how to calculate the approximate yield formula. The first video, which I will link to in this video, calculated the first portion of that formula called the average dividends portion of the approximate yield formula. This video, we're going to be calculating the average growth rate of a stock. So if you haven't watched that first video, please pause the video right here, go watch the average dividends video, and then come back so that you can pick up part 2 of how to calculate the approximate yield formula. So just to give everybody a refresher, the approximate yield formula is the average dividends, which we did in the previous video, plus the average growth rate of a stock, which we'll be doing in this video, divided by the average price of a stock, which will be in part 3, video number 3 of this series. On the left-hand side, you'll see the example that we're going to be going through. On the right-hand side, we will be calculating it. So let's get started. The average growth rate of a stock portion of the approximate yield formula gives us this example. It says you calculated a price to earnings ratio, or a PE ratio, for a stock to be 13. Using the same growth rate, that's the one that was used in the previous video, of 6.5%, a current stock price of $26 per share, and an earnings per share of $2, find the average growth of this stock over a 4-year period. Round each year's price to the nearest cent. Again, that is a very critical stage to understand, to round each year's price to the nearest cent. And so let's get started on this. So the first step that we have to go through in calculating the average growth The first step, step number 1, is to find each year's projected earnings. And you may be wondering, well, how do we calculate that projected earnings? Well, if we go back and we look at the example, it gives us an earnings per share number. It tells us that for every share, we earn about $2 per share. So we're going to use that number. We're going to use that $2 per share, and basically the formula is earnings per share multiplied by your growth rate. Step number 2 says find to year 4 and input year 4 in step number 2. All you're basically doing is step number 1, you're finding to year 4. Step number 2, tell me what year 4 is right here in step number 2 to keep it clear and concise. Step number 3 says you take the number that you found in step number 2 and you multiply that by your PE ratio, which was given in the very beginning of the problem as number 13. Now you plug this into the average growth rate of a stock formula. Average growth rate of a stock is equal to, and I'll just put it right here, is equal to the future price of a stock minus the current price of a stock. And that is all divided by the number of years. So basically step 3, if you want to rewrite step 3 is basically finding the future price. When we're doing this right here, we're finding the future price. And you know what? I'll even add that as a line for us so we know exactly what we're trying to do. Find future price of a stock. That's what we're trying to do. And then we plug it into the average growth rate of a stock formula. And then once we find this number right here, we'll be plugging it in to this right here. That will be the average growth rate of a stock. It'll now go into the approximate yield formula. So again, a very intricate formula. And so that's the reason why we want to do this tutorial. So let's get started. Let's start with step number 1, and we'll go forward from there. So step number 1 says find each year's projected earnings by using earnings per share times growth. So what we can do is we can do year 1, and we could go the earnings per share is $2 right here, $2. So we plug that in 2 times, and it's that same growth rate, so we go 1.065. And if you want to know why I calculated that, please go back and watch video number 1 on how to calculate average dividends. I explain it in detail there. So 2 times 1.065, we go over here, we'll calculate it again, 2.13. So now we have our number for year 2, and we go 2.13 times 1.065. And see, now we have to round that. So what would year 3 be? Exactly. Year 3 would be 2.27 because you have to round to the nearest cent. 6 and 8 you have to round up, times 1.065. And to calculate that, we would go 2.27 times 1.0. Again, 2.41, so we go over here, year number 4, 2.417, so we round up, 2.42 times 1.065. $2.577. So step number 2 says state year 4, find to year 4. Year 4 would be 2.58 because of the rounding. All right. Step number 3 tells us, let's go put the number from step number 2 and multiply it by the PE ratio. So step number 2 is 2.58, and we would multiply that by the PE ratio, which is 13. I'll put it below here. 33.54. So step number 3, which is the future price, oops, don't want to do it that far. Let me close it back up real quick. There we go. That makes a lot more sense. And we'll slap a dollar sign on that so you know exactly what it is. So by calculating with our PE ratio, our price to earnings ratio, and our earnings per share using a growth rate of 6.5%, as well as using 4 years as a time frame, we can calculate, or we can estimate, that in year 4, the price of the stock should be $33.54, or somewhere near that. It's not going to be exact, right? This is all like fortune telling. It's all predicting what it could be, right? In order to make better financial decisions with investing. So we know that the future price is 33.54. So now what? Now we go and we plug it into this average growth rate of a stock formula, and we see here it says future price of a stock, which is right here, 33.54, minus the current price of the stock. Well, where's the current price of the stock, you may ask? It's right here in the example, $26 per share. And divided by the number of years. So do we know the number of years? Yep, 4 years. So now let's just plug that in. Let's plug that in. So future price is equal to $33.54. Current price, 26. Number of years, 4. And now we can plug it in to this formula right here. So we will take, let's do it right here for us, average growth rate of a stock, and we will go $33.54 minus $26 divided by 4. And if we want to know what that answer is, 1.885. But look at round each year's price to the nearest cent. We're always rounding to 2. So what does that turn into? Exactly, it turns into 1.89. So if we go back and look up here, we would add the 1.89 into this portion of the formula. And if you've already watched video number 1 on how to calculate the average dividends, we did that as well up in here, and we calculated that, but I'll let you go back and watch it, or watch that video, come back, do this video, and then put the 2 on the top, and you already have the numerator solved. So, yeah, with that 1.89, just to recap how we got there, first we found each year's projected growth earnings by doing an earnings per share times 1 plus the growth rate, or the growth rate of it. I'll change that to make sure that we all understand that. 1 plus the growth rate. Then we find to year number 4, and we put year number 4 there. Step number 3, we take step number 2, which is year 4's number, and we multiply it by the PE ratio. And this shows all those calculations that we've done for that. We've found to year 4, we put year 4 there. We multiplied year 4 times the PE ratio of 13. That gave us our future price. With our future price, we could plug it into the average growth rate of a stock formula. Once we got the average growth rate of a stock formula, we could add it into our formula that's up here that I changed to represent where it was in the formula. So with that, please head on over now to video number 3, tutorial number 3, which we will calculate, where we will calculate the average price of a stock, and we'll actually wrap up this formula, a nice 3-part series on how to wrap up the formula. And so, or 3 parts in determining the components of the formula. I think video number 4 will be a condensed version, just showing all 3 numbers there, dividing it up and explaining the formula. But thank you again for watching, and go and watch the other videos in this playlist again if you are still confused. Bye.